concerning changes happening to Earth's water cycle, and this is what satellite data is revealing. Climate change throwing Earth's water cycle severely out of whack. According to new satellite data, fresh waters are growing fresher and salt waters are growing saltier at an increasingly rapid rate all over the world. And if this continues, it will turbocharge rainstorms. These findings indicate a severe acceleration of global water cycle. It's a sign that is not as clearly observed in direct salinity measurements from ocean buoys, which typically measure a little below the surface of the ocean, but is commonly predicted in climate models. As global temperatures increase, climate scientists expect there'll be greater evaporation on the ocean surface, of course, which will make the top layer of the sea saltier and add moisture to the atmosphere. This in turn will increase rainfall in other parts of the world, diluting some bodies of water to make them even less salty. And the pattern can basically be described as wet gets wetter, dry gets drier, and it's a real cause for concern. If the water cycle accelerates with global warming, it could have profound impacts on modern society, driving drought and water shortages as well as greater storms and flooding. It might even have started speeding up snowmelt as rainfall has been increasing in the polar regions. This higher amount of water circulating in the atmosphere could also explain the increase in rainfall that's been detected in some polar areas, where the fact that it's raining instead of snowing is speeding up the melting, explains Barcelona's Institute of Marine Sciences mathematician Estrella Olmedo. In the far north and far south poles of our planet, there are fewer ocean buoys that directly measure surface salinity. The new satellite analysis is the first to provide a global view of this. Where the wind is no longer so strong, the surface water warms up, but does not exchange heat with the water below, allowing the surface to become more saline than the lower layers and enabling effort of evaporation to be observed with satellite measurements. This is what physicist Antonio Drier from Institut de Ciencias de Mar in Spain says. He says, this tells us that the atmosphere and ocean interact in a stronger way than we imagined, with important consequences for the continental and polar areas. Recent climate models predict that for every Celsius degree of warming, Earth's water cycle could intensify by up to 7%. Practically it means that that with wet areas could grow 7% wetter and dry areas 7% drier on average. Global satellite data now backs up these predictions. In tropical and mid-latitude regions, researchers found significant differences between buoy measurements of salinity and satellite measurements of salinity. The latter measurements more clearly show changes in Earth's water cycle. Estrella Olmedo says specifically in the Pacific Ocean we have seen that surface salinity decreases more slowly than subsurface salinity, and in this region we've observed an increase in sea surface temperature and a decrease in the intensity of winds and the depth of mixing layers. The authors agree that future ocean models should include salinity satellite data, as it seems to be faithful proxy for global fluxes in evaporation and precipitation. The only way to ensure heat waves, droughts, and storms don't intensify in the future is to limit global warming, and there's plenty that humanity can still do. The world is already locked into a certain amount of change. The most recent report from the International Planet Panel on Climate Change estimates that if we can keep global warming to 2 degrees Celsius, extreme weather events will be 14% stronger than they were at the start of the Industrial Revolution. That's a concerning amount of change. 14%, it's a pretty big amount. In 2021, the United Nations warned the coming decades will likely bring a litany of catastrophic droughts. When nearly a quarter of the world is already experiencing water shortages, the consequences could be dire. This was published on Scientific Reports, and it's on Science Alert by Carly Castella. Please leave your comments. Thank you for your support. Kindly support my Patreon account. The daily posts are 5 videos daily, and they are totally different from what I have on my YouTube channel. Thank you so much for your support and that you find all my content so interesting. You'll find the Patreon account details in the description box below.